Hi, very good morning. I am Dr. Janak Patel, MD, General Physician. Today we'll be talking on one of the very interesting topic which is very important in your everyday practice. That is useful to fourth year student as well as interns and the person who are practicing. We will be talking on shock and how you approach to a shock person, because this person who are likely to go into shock stage or who are already in a stage of shock, if you detect them early, you can prevent mortality and even morbidity. So as early as possible, if you pick up those cases, you will be able to reduce the incidence of death as well as damage to different organs. There are some common variety of shock: anaphylactic shock, hemorrhagic shock, septic shock, cardiogenic shock, and there are many more. So as usual, definition, etiology, pathophysiology, clinical features we'll be discussing. One of the most common you will come across is cardiogenic shock. So these are cardiogenic shock. This is cardiogenic, this is cardiogenic, these are all cardiogenic shock. And this is vasovagal shock. Vasovagal shock is not that much dangerous, but cardiogenic shock is definitely dangerous. You have to differentiate between all those different groups. But once in a while, vasogenic shock, or we call vasovagal shock, can be dangerous, because if it is secondary due to some of the cardiac arrhythmias, then it can be dangerous one. You have to differentiate those groups. Vasovagal shock. These are all the different photographs showing. Sometimes you can have a mixture of the two: septic shock with hemorrhagic shock, hypovolemic shock, hemorrhagic with septic shock, pure simple septic shock you can have. This is also one variety of shock where your treatment in all these conditions do not help you. They will not help you. But this is entirely different. You don't have to rush to a person and help him out. Don't worry, I'll shave you. You will be stuck into that condition. Now, first prime thing, whenever you find any person who is unconscious and pulse blood pressure is not recordable, there are no heart sounds, there are no respiratory effort, you have to start with resuscitation. You have to start with resuscitation. That is circulation, airway, and breathing. And if person is having the cardiac rhythm which is shockable, you will have to go for defibrillation. So look at respiration, look at pupil, examine brainstem reflexes like vestibulo-ocular reflexes, examine corneal cuff and gag reflex, and also look for motor response to identify the damage to the brain. This will be possible only after the pulse and blood pressure has come up. But if that is not there, first thing to do is try to bring back circulation, see that the airway is patent and breathing is maintained. You have to look for this. So we always call CAP followed by defib. This is not the ideal way of giving CPR. The best way of giving CPR is this. Now we'll be going through some of the terminology as well as some of the definition. Hypotension means if there is a fall of blood pressure below 90/60 in adult, or if there is a sudden drop of blood pressure of 30 to 40 millimeter of mercury or more from the baseline, then you call that as hypotension. And we call postural hypotension when there is a drop of diastolic blood pressure more than 15 millimeter of mercury. We'll call that as postural hypotension or orthostatic hypotension. Some person describe as drop in 10 to 20 millimeter of mercury. So more than 20 millimeter of mercury drop in systolic blood pressure will be labeled as orthostatic hypotension in an erect posture. So hypotension, shock stage, different term, and normotensive. Normotensive means where the blood pressure is maintained, perfusion of all the vital organ including the peripheral tissue is being maintained, and if there is a fall of blood pressure below 90/60 or if there is a sudden fall of blood pressure, systolic blood pressure more than 30 to 40 millimeter of mercury, you can label that as hypotension. And when the peripheral perfusion of the tissue, the demand by the peripheral tissue is not met with, we label that as shock stage. So American Society described decline in 20 millimeter of mercury in systolic blood pressure and fall of 10 to 15 millimeter of mercury in diastolic blood pressure from supine posture to standing posture will be described as orthostatic hypotension or postural hypotension. But the person must be at least minimum for 3 minutes in an erect posture or standing posture. While shock is a physiological stage where systemic impairment of oxygen delivery as a result of reduced tissue perfusion, and almost it is always because of fall in blood pressure. So reduction in a blood flow by diminished cardiac output or maldistribution of blood flow, that is potentially irreversible tissue damage, then we label that as shock stage. Also, there is another way of description: inadequate perfusion of the body tissue that begins at the cellular level and if left untreated can result into death of a tissue or an organ or a system, and ultimately the entire organism, means we call as a death. So it is not low blood pressure, but it is decrease in the blood supply which can result into death of a tissue or the organ involved or the person himself. Then we label that as a shock stage. So there are certain things which will tell you that the person is going in a shock stage. One, altered mental status or ill appearance, the critically ill patient. Tachycardia, heart rate more than 100, respiratory rate more than 22 per minute, and CO2 less than 32. Because of tachypnea, the person CO2 will be reduced. Arterial base deficit, because as the carbon dioxide is washed out, person goes into electrolyte imbalance. As well as because of hypoxia, there is a production of lactic acid, anaerobic metabolism, and that will result into increased level of lactate. And when lactate level goes more than 4, there will be base deficit of -5. When you come across this, this is also one of the point which will tell you that person is going into peripheral shock, or we call person is going into circulatory shock stage. Because of decreased blood supply to kidney, urine output will be less than 0.5 ml per kilogram per hour. And person will have severe hypotension lasting for more than 20 minutes. If you come across this criteria, then we label that person is going for a shock stage or he is already in a shock stage. Again, I am repeating: ill appearance or altered mental status, tachycardia, tachypnea with hypocapnia, base deficit increase, lactate level increase. So arterial base deficit is -5, urine output less than 0.5 ml, and hypotension persistent for more than 20 minutes. Then we label that the person is in a shock stage. Also, there are other methods of demonstrating. They put altered mental status right from agitation, delirium to somnolence, even coma, and person can have convulsions. Increase heart rate, and secondary to increase in the heart rate, you can have increased troponin also. Decrease urine output with increase in creatinine level. Because of decreased perfusion and anaerobic metabolism, decreased energy production, cold clammy extremities, peripheral cyanosis, and weak peripheral pulse. Lactate level are increased. Secondary to that, there is always acidosis, which will result into decreased bicarbonate. So there will be base deficit, increased base deficit. Also, there will be more chance of alteration in the platelets like thrombocytopenia and increase in INR, ending up with DIC. So in a DIC, you will have a platelet count low and INR increased. Liver will be affected. You will have an increased bilirubin level, increased AST, ALT level. Fall of blood pressure, tachypnea and hypoxia with hypocapnia, decrease in CO2 because of tachypnea. So this will be all the conditions which you can see together. So either you utilize this, which are being put into criterias, and these are also alternative method, but these are including more criterias. So ideally this becomes the best way of identifying any person who is in a shock stage. So to recognize a shock stage, you can utilize all altered mental status, tachycardia, decreased urine output, cold clammy extremities, peripheral cyanosis, weak pulse, increased, these are laboratory parameters. These are laboratory parameter. Increased bilirubin, increased SGOT, SGPT, thrombocytopenia, increased INR, DIC, and increased lactate level, acidosis with base deficit, and decreased bicarbonate level. Also, you can utilize tachycardia, increased respiratory rate with hypoxia. So all this you can utilize. So secondary to shock state, there is an increased demand but decreased supply, and that will result into what we call as capillary refilling time, or capillary nail refilling time will be prolonged, will be more than 2 seconds. And this can happen in dehydration, shock, peripheral vascular disease, and even in case of hypothermia. You can see here the capillary refilling time will be prolonged. So if capillary refilling time, you can see in the palm or you can see in the nail also. If the time taken to refill is more than 2 seconds, we call as refilling time is prolonged, and that is one of the characteristic of a shock stage. Certain terminology which are very commonly utilized, we call compensated or non-progressive. When person from compensated stage goes to uncompensated stage, we use the word progressive. And last word, when the person goes into end stage, we call irreversible. So these are the three common words which are being utilized. There is an alternative word, mild, moderate, and severe. So when you say severe, it is indirectly irreversible. When you say mild, it is compensated and non-progressive. And when you say moderate, it is gradually progressive and it may go into irreversible stage, or we call it a severe stage. So these are few of the terminology which are being utilized. So compensated, uncompensated, and irreversible. Compensated means the blood pressure is maintained, but there is a tachycardia and there is a maintenance of end organ perfusion. Further, if the pathophysiology continues, now person will start developing microvascular perfusion disturbances, symptom signs of end organ damage, and person will have hypotension. And when there is a progressive end organ damage, acidosis, cell death, we call as irreversible. There are few terms which are very frequently utilized depending upon the pathophysiological terms. We call hypovolemic shock, cardiogenic shock, distributive shock, or we call vasodilatory shock, obstructive shock, as well as there are other terms, arrhythmogenic shock and toxin mediated shock. We know very well hypovolemic can be because of loss of fluid volumes, maybe fluid, maybe blood. So very commonly we call as a blood loss or fluid loss or plasma loss. In cardiogenic, it is because of a decreased contractility of the heart to eject the blood adequately. And that can be divided into two groups. We usually use the word cardiogenic and obstructive. In cardiogenic, we call acute myocardial infarction, myocarditis, severe congestive heart failure, etc. While in obstructive variety, where there is a low preload, and in this you can come across massive pulmonary embolism, cardiac tamponade or pericardial tamponade, tension pneumothorax, etc., where there is a decrease venous return to cardiac chamber. So there is an obstruction which results into obstruction to the venous return to LV. This is a classical example of an obstructive variety. While in distributive variety, there is a decrease in systemic vascular resistance because of severe peripheral vasodilatation. And classical example of that is sepsis, anaphylactic shock, and neurogenic shock. These three conditions: septic, anaphylaxis, and neurogenic shock. They put one more variety which is usually not mentioned in some of the common books. We call arrhythmogenic shock, where because of severe tachyarrhythmia or severe bradyarrhythmias, low heart rate or low preload. So in a severe tachycardia, there is a low preload due to short diastolic filling time. While in a severe bradycardia, because of severe decrease in the heart rate, it can end up into a shock stage. Why? Because of toxins or because of some mechanism, the oxygen delivery is not complete. That can be like cyanide poisoning, carbon monoxide poisoning. In cyanide poisoning, it inhibits the oxidative phosphorylation. While in carbon monoxide, there is a leftward shift of a oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, inhibiting oxidative phosphorylation, meaning the oxygen cannot be delivered. While same thing happens in cyanide poisoning. So these are called toxic mediated shock stage, or we call cytotoxic shock. Cytotoxic shock. So hypovolemic, normovolemic. Hypovolemic can be fluid, blood, or plasma. Fluid is water, classical example, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, or gastroenteritis. And there can be many causes in gastroenteritis like viral infection, rotavirus, or maybe food poisoning, cholera, typhoid, etc. Blood loss may be internal or external. Plasma loss, burns, massive drainage of ascites, or pleural effusion. Normovolemic we divide into cardiogenic, which can be cardiac or can be extracardiac. And in extracardiac, we commonly use the word obstructive variety. In distributive variety, anaphylactic shock, septic shock, neurogenic shock. Once in a while, in endocrine shock also, you can have a distributive variety. While dissociative variety is because of carbon monoxide poisonings, cyanide, and once in a while in sulf and methemoglobinemia. So these are the terminology. So common term we utilize is hypovolemic, cardiogenic, obstructive, and distributive. or some people use the word septic shock, H for hypovolemic hemorrhagic shock, O for obstructive, C for cardiogenic, and K for anaphylactic. This is the way, whichever way you remember all the different terms. So hypovolemic, cardiogenic is normovolemic, which you can divide into intrinsic and obstructive variety. Distributive variety will be septic shock, which can be hyperdynamic, hypodynamic, neurogenic, endocrine, anaphylactic. These are all the different terms utilized in hypotension, orthostatic, postprandial, drug-induced, hypovolemic, cardiogenic, neurogenic, vasogenic, and there is one more term. This you should be aware of it. Orthostatic, orthostatic you know very well. Orthostatic means when the fall of blood pressure in an erect posture more than 20 millimeter of mercury and person is standing for minimum 3 minutes, then we call that orthostatic. Postprandial means after taking a heavy meal, if there is a fall of blood pressure, it is called postprandial. If it is secondary due to drugs, it is also called as iatrogenic or drug induced. Hypovolemic is because of loss of fluid, blood or plasma. Cardiogenic is secondary due to myocardial contractility. Neurogenic is because of the damage to autonomic nervous system resulting into vasodilatation and giving rise to fall of blood pressure. So vasogenic is also called as a vasovagal. And there is one more term which is being utilized is deliberate, or we use the word control, or we use the word induce, meaning we induce hypotension and that induction is well controlled by means of a drug during anesthesia to decrease the amount of bleeding during surgery. And this is one of the technology which is being utilized during surgery to reduce the amount of bleeding, and that is called as deliberate or controlled, or we use induced hypotension. So do remember, sometime you will come across this terminology. This is advanced traumatic classification for hemorrhagic shock, where it is divided into class 1, class 2, class 3 and class 4. I am not going into detail. If you are interested, you can go through. This is traumatic injury leading to hemorrhagic shock, where you utilize this for diagnosis the severity of the hemorrhagic shock. Etiology, this we already discussed before: hypovolemic, normovolemic, cardiogenic, distributive, dissociative. Further in detail, you can divide into cardiogenic, hypovolemic, and high cardiac output with decreased systemic vascular resistance, like septic shock, anaphylactic shock, endocrine, etc. While hypovolemic is because of fluid loss or blood loss, most common, and cardiogenic classical MI, arrhythmia, myocarditis comes topmost on the list, and this is what we call as an obstructive variety, cardiac tamponade. If you go through the all varieties of shock, septic shock accounts for almost 60 to 70%. So it is the biggest group. So first, always we try to rule out septic shock. Second big group accounts for what we call as an obstructive variety, which is accounting, sorry, not obstructive variety, cardiogenic and hypovolemic. So cardiogenic variety will be normovolemic, hypovolemic will be 16%. If you take this together, this becomes 32. So this plus this two will be accounting for almost 95%. Distributive shock, which is non-specific, you cannot, other than septic, like anaphylactic shock, endocrine shock, etc., which are other variety of distributive shock, they account for only 4% of the group. And obstructive group, which is a variety of cardiogenic, that is accounting for only 2%. So this, if you take it, septic shock is the most common. Second common is cardiogenic and another is hypovolemic. So always try to rule out this first and then look for other conditions, that is obstructive variety and non-septic variety. So septic shock is 62%, non-septic is 4%, cardiogenic is 16, hypovolemic is 16, obstructive is 2%. And in septic shock, you will come across different stages right from you should pick up in this group or even before this. So try to suspect so that person does not go into a septic shock where there is a refractory hypotension. I'm not going into detail at present in this. Sometime if we come across, we'll be discussing on a septic shock separate. Because septic shock will be one of the variety of a distributive shock, the most common. It can be because of infection, bacteremia, which will end up with sepsis. But SIRS can be because of trauma, burns, pancreatitis, etc. And it can be also because of infection, SIRS. That infective pathophysiology will end up into infection, secondary due to fungus, parasite, virus, etc. The most common is bacteria. Second common is parasites, virus, fungi, etc. All this bacterial as well as infection by other organisms can end up into sepsis. And this sepsis can end up into what we call as a distributive shock, we call it as a septic shock. Severe sepsis and then can end up into septic shock. And it is more than 60%, almost 60 to 70%. This is hemorrhagic shock, very, very common. Another is loss of fluid like diuresis, diabetes insipidus, GI tract loss like vomiting, diarrhea, or decreased body fluid, etc. So this will be hypovolemic shock and plasma loss. Classical example is burns, extensive burns. So hypovolemic can be hemorrhagic, fluid loss, and also you can have a partly hypovolemic secondary due to venodilatation like sepsis, anaphylaxis. So do keep it in mind. These are some of the conditions where you can have a decreased plasma volume or decreased blood volume. I'm not going into detail regarding what are the different conditions which produce a hemorrhagic, hypovolemic, etc. In cardiogenic, one is pump, and that will be accounting for almost we say 75%. Rest of the 25% congestive heart failure, which may be secondary due to MR, VSD, right ventricular shock, cardiac tamponade, which will be obstructive variety, and miscellaneous. So this will be all the different conditions which will give rise to cardiogenic shock. You can see predominantly it is because of a LV failure, acute left ventricular failure. So most common cause is that, and cause of acute left ventricular failure is MI. Most common is acute myocardial infarction. So most common will be acute myocardial infarction. It can be because of myocardial contusion secondary due to trauma, myocarditis, cardiomyopathy, septic myocardial depression, drug induced, etc. All this condition it can be. But the most common comes topmost on the list is because of myocardial infarction. You can divide into intracardiac, extracardiac. Extracardiac we call is an obstructive where pulmonary embolism, severe pulmonary hypertension, cardiac tamponade, tension pneumothorax, aortic dissection, etc. While intracardiac, classical example is myocardial infarction. You can have a valvular obstruction, severe cardiac arrhythmias. Already in an obstructive variety we have mentioned aortic dissection, valvular heart disease like AS, MS, PS, septal wall rupture, massive pulmonary embolism, cardiac tamponade, left atrial myxoma, left atrial thrombus formation, which can, and it is accounting for only 2%. So these are all extra cardiac obstruction. If you are interested, you can go through your leisure time. There are many more conditions we have mentioned here. In a distributive variety, there is a massive peripheral vasodilatation producing reduction in a systemic vascular resistance, and classical example of that is septic shock, anaphylactic shock, neurogenic shock, toxic because of some of the drugs, and in endocrine, classical example, Addison's crisis. So distributive shock can be septic, which can be because of bacterial, fungus, virus, rickettsia, etc. There is another term utilized, toxic shock syndrome, anaphylaxis, neurogenic, or we also call it a spinal shock. Among endocrine, two common most, adrenal crisis and thyrotoxic crisis. Rare condition like drugs, that is nitroprusside, and end-stage liver disease can also end up in a distributive variety. Anaphylactic shock can be because of many, right from drugs to insect bites, etc. Even food, some of the foods like soya bean, nuts, shellfish, milk, egg, drugs like nitrates, monosodium glutamate, penicillin, aspirin, most notorious sulfa, can end up with even some of the NSAID. And in that, typically you get what we call as involvement of the lips, eyelids. This. Can you recognize what is this? Angioneurotic edema. So very typical, and you will get a severe rash all over the body. Very classical. Early you pick up, you can treat the patient. Yes, there are some of the conditions which can produce neurogenic shock. How exactly it produces, it is mentioned in detail here. It is most commonly because of spinal cord injury or during spinal anesthesia or because of severe hypoglycemia, severe pain, etc. So these are some of the conditions which can produce neurogenic shock. Exact mechanism is mentioned in detail here. What happens? There is an imbalance between sympathetic, parasympathetic, producing massive vasodilatation, decrease in vascular tone, decreased systemic vascular resistance, inadequate cardiac output, and person goes into a shock stage. So that is the most common conditions. So it is one of the variety of a distributive shock because of spinal cord injury and during spinal anesthesia, most common. Dissociative shock is very commonly because of carbon monoxide poisoning and cyanide poisoning, most common. Occasionally it can be because of methemoglobinemia or sulfhemoglobinemia. So these are the two common, carbon monoxide and cyanide poisoning. That is dissociative variety, one of the dissociative variety, or you can call it a cytotoxic shock, one of the cause of cytotoxic shock. So these are the common term utilized: vasodilatory, obstructive, cardiogenic, toxic, hypovolemic, metabolic. Orthostatic hypotension can be because of cardiogenic or can be because of hypovolemic. These are some of the drugs which can produce orthostatic hypotension, and person can also go into shock state because of excessive dose of these drugs. These are the common causes which can be neurogenic causes which can end up with orthostatic hypotension and can also produce neurogenic shock stage. Venous pooling can also end up with orthostatic hypotension. These are all the different conditions which can end up with orthostatic hypotension. In detail it is being mentioned. If you are interested, you can go through. What happens in a shock stage? Because of decreased blood flow, decreased perfusion. But if a person has got adequate blood flow, there is an adequate perfusion. If there is an inadequate blood flow, there is an inadequate perfusion, or we call hypoperfusion, and secondary to hypoperfusion, now person will go into a shock stage. But what happens because of decreased perfusion? Hypoxia, anaerobic metabolism, Secondary to anaerobic metabolism, decrease ATP production. The ATP production is only 2 to 3 ATP production. Hence, you will get a cold clammy extremities, weakness, fatigue, lack of energy. And because of anaerobic metabolism, increased lactic acid production, which will produce acidosis. So we call that as a metabolic acidosis, and that metabolic acidosis will produce cell membrane dysfunction, failure of sodium pump, lysosomal enzymes will be released, resulting into efflux of potassium, influx of sodium and water, damage to the cells, toxic substance enters into circulation, capillary endothelium is damaged, and there is a further damage to the cell, and cell can undergo death because of acidosis. Now, vasoconstriction, failure of precapillary sphincters, there is a peripheral pooling of the blood because of excess of lactic acid will now produce vasodilatation, failure of sphincters, vasodilatation, pooling of blood, and secondary to pooling of blood, there is a decreased venous return. Because of decreased venous return, there is a decreased cardiac output, further exacerbation of a shock stage, and this will lead into what we call as an irreversible shock stage or severe shock stage. So hypoperfusion, increased catecholamine release, activation of alpha adrenergic receptor, which will produce secondary due to hypovolemic, cardiogenic or obstructive shock, peripheral vasoconstriction, increase in systemic vascular resistance, cold clammy extremities. This will try to compensate. But in a distributive variety, vessel is unable to constrict. You will have a warm extremities because there is an increased blood flow secondary due to vasodilatation. There is a decrease in systemic vascular resistance. So this will be very peculiar, but venous return is reduced, and that will end up into fall of blood pressure, further damage to target organs because of further aggravation of shock stage. So anaerobic metabolism will give rise to only production of 2 molecules of ATP, and there is a decreased production of heat, and lactic acid production increases. So that will be the major things. So this is the cycle which is being shown: blood loss, inadequate perfusion, hypoxia, anaerobic metabolism, lactic acid production, cell edema, acidosis, again further damage to the cell and cell death. Body tries to compensate by increasing the heart rate, by increasing the stroke volume, but if this cannot be compensated, person will go into a shock stage, and this will classically happen if any person who has got increase in preload, decrease myocardial contractility, increase in afterload also. So there will be decrease in cardiac output. These are the factors which will be affecting during a shock stage: preload, myocardial contractility, afterload, increase in afterload, decrease in preload, and decreased contractility will lead into shock stage. So this is, if myocardium fails, we call as a pump failure. If there is a decreased cardiac output secondary to myocardium, it will end up with a damage to target organs like brain, kidney, heart, etc. If there is a decrease in systemic vascular resistance, it is distributive shock. There is a low preload, low contractility, low heart rate, low systemic vascular resistance. And if there is a decreased venous return and decreased volume of blood, we call hypovolemic shock. So decreased venous return or decreased volume of blood coming to the heart, hypovolemic. Decreased cardiac output, cardiogenic. Blood does not come out adequately from the heart. Heart function is good, but it cannot come out. Obstructive. And when cardiac output is good, but it is not distributed properly to the peripheral tissue, it is called distributive. So these are the four mechanisms which can happen. Decrease venous return to the heart, decrease contraction of the heart, cardiogenic, obstruction to the outflow, obstructive, and disturbances in distribution, distributive. So cardiogenic, distributive, hypovolemic, and obstructive. These are the four mechanisms. So pumping function affected, cardiogenic. Pumping function is good but cannot come out, obstructive. Distribution is not proper, distributive. And when return to the heart is not complete, hypovolemic. So these are all the different varieties which you can come across. I've already discussed all this, so I can skip over these slides. In cardiogenic, it can be inadequate pumping, inadequate cardiac output, decreased venous return to the heart, hypovolemic, and excessive vasodilatation, distributive variety. So hypovolemic shock, cardiogenic shock, obstructive shock, distributive shock. You can have a pause at each slide and go through. I'm skipping over these particular slides. Same what we were explained is explained in a diagrammatic pattern. So diminished cardiac output. There are some conditions where there will be increased cardiac output, but still the person is having a shock stage. So hypovolemic is because of decreased volume of blood going to the heart and there is a decrease in cardiac output. In obstructive variety, there is an obstruction to the outflow from LV. That will produce obstructive variety of shock stage. When myocardium cannot contract and produce an adequate output, we call cardiogenic. And when the cardiac output is not distributed properly to the peripheral tissue, we call distributive variety, which is mainly because of peripheral vasodilatation. And all this ends up into organ damage. This is how exactly in detail it is mentioned: hypovolemic, cardiogenic, obstructive variety, and distributive variety, the mechanism, and finally it ends up into shock stage and multi-organ damage syndrome. So at your leisure time, you can go through this different. This is regarding septic shock, how exactly it takes place. I'm not going into detail. This is again in detail regarding how exactly you get different inflammatory mediators, etc., acting in septic shock, different types of mediators, what are the things they end up with: microvascular thrombosis, vasodilatation, systemic effects, immunosuppressions, etc. in septic shock. This is in an anaphylactic shock. At your leisure time, whenever you are free, you can go through, because this is a very, very big topic. So I'm not going into detail. We divide into different stages. We call initial stage, where person gets a disease. Early stage, where tissue are under perfused, decreased cardiac output, increased anaerobic metabolism, lactic acid is produced. When there is a further increase in lactic acid production, anaerobic metabolism, now person goes into what we call as a compensatory stage, which is still reversible, where there is a sympathetic activation. Because of sympathetic activation, now you try to compensate by increasing in the heart rate, by increasing the force of contraction of the myocardium, etc. You try to increase the perfusion. If it reverses back. Person doesn't go from compensatory stage into what we call as a progressive or we call decompensation. Compensatory stage is called non-progressive. But when the damage continues, now person will go into progressive stage where now compensatory mechanism fails. Compensatory mechanism fails. There is a profound vasoconstriction because of sympathetic overactivity, increased production of lactic acid, and that will result into metabolic acidosis. And this metabolic acidosis now will start producing damage to the peripheral tissue because of exchange of sodium potassium, entry of sodium and water inside into the cell and producing damage. And now person goes into what we call as the irreversible stage or refractory stage. And in this irreversible stage, there is a cell damage we call cellular necrosis, and depending upon the number of organ involvement, we call as a multi-organ dysfunction syndrome. And then person has got a very high mortality. This is a irreversible stage, or we call as a severe or end stage, or also used as a refractory stage. If you are interested, this is in detail what exactly happens in a compensatory stage or a non-progressive stage, absolute hypovolemia, what happens in a cardiac output, and how exactly the things goes on in detail. This is mentioned here in a progressive stage. This is that same stage that person goes into hypotension, compensation fails. Now person goes into what we call the uncompensated stage or a progressive stage. Person will have a further vasoconstriction, decreased blood supply, increased anaerobic metabolism, increased production of lactic acid, metabolic acidosis. This will result into influx of sodium and water, cellular edema, diminished cell function, and cell necrosis. And once there is a cell necrosis, person will now start developing organ dysfunction, we call the multi-organ dysfunction syndrome. And now from that, he will go into what we call the irreversible stage or refractory stage or end stage. So this is progressive. At your leisure, you can go through. This is in progressive, they call intermediate stage also. Same thing explained here in detail. If you are interested, you can go through how exactly you start getting damage to different organs. And then this is different things what is happening in an irreversible stage, that is we call as an end stage, where you start getting severe damage to the organs, multi-organ dysfunctions, and person finally succumb to death. So on a heart, you will have a decreased cardiac output, hypotension, myocardial depression further, and further vicious cycle will continue. In a lung, decreased gas exchange, tachypnea, pulmonary edema. In an endocrine, ADS secretion will be increased, reabsorption of water to compensate. In CNS, decreased perfusion, person will be drowsy, he can go into stupor, coma, and even he can develop hypoxic convulsions. In blood, coagulative factors are activated and it can end up into what we call as a DIC. Decreased GFR, decreased urine output, damage to renal tubules, renal acute tubular necrosis, and person can go into AKI. In GI tract, liver damage, increase in liver enzymes, quite common, and person can get even mucosal ischemia, stress ulcer, and bleeding from stress ulcer, and person can have hematemesis. These are all the organs which are being damaged, right from brain, heart, endocrine system, kidney, lungs, even inflammatory mediators, hemostasis. There will be DIC, pancreas can be affected, liver damage can take place, bowel ischemia, ulceration, and bleeding. All that can happen in a what we call the irreversible stage. History is very important to identify person is in a compensated stage, uncompensated, or irreversible stage. Always try to elicit from the history it is hypovolemic or normovolemic. So you can differentiate hypovolemic from normovolemic, and in normovolemic, cardiogenic and distributive, dissociative. Try to differentiate those three groups. By and large, you can suspect very easily shock stage and which variety. Some of the general features we already mentioned in that: hypotension, tachycardia, cold clammy extremities, tachypnea, altered mental status like drowsiness, confusion, irritability, oliguria, elevated or reduced central venous pressure, multi-organ failure will suggest person is going towards irreversible stage. So fall in blood pressure, tachycardia, tachypnea or bradypnea, urine output less than 0.5, base deficit, CO2 reduce, bicarbonate reduce, severe hypoxia, warm extremities or cold clammy extremities, altered mental status like anxious, agitations, lethargy, obtundation, or we call drowsy, stupor, coma, etc. There will be two common variety. One we call as warm shock and cold shock. These are some of the signs we already mentioned: tachycardia, fall of blood pressure, tachypnea, altered mental status, wide pulse pressure going to become a narrow pulse pressure, cold clammy extremities or warm extremities, and decreased cardiac output. This slide we have already shown you before. This also I have shown you before. These are all the things. Some of the are laboratory parameters. These are laboratory parameters. These are laboratory parameters. While these are what we call as a clinical. And some you can easily identify by using pulse oximeter. You can get O2. This will be laboratory parameter, troponin. Some are very simple. Creatinine will be laboratory. So go for clinical parameters, more common. So pulse, blood pressure, respiration, skin, etc. should be examined properly. Drop in systolic blood pressure less than 90, narrow pulse pressure. There is something called as a shock index where you heart rate is divided by systemic blood pressure. May be of help if you try to identify. And if you don't feel pulse, carotid pulse, blood pressure has to be less than 60. Femoral pulse not palpable, less than 70. If radial pulse is not palpable, less than 80. Dorsal speed is not palpable, less than 80. These are some of the, roughly you can take it. You can have a narrow pulse pressure shock and wide pulse pressure shock. In septic shock and anaphylactic shock, you will have a wide pulse pressure shock stage. While in hypovolemic, cardiogenic, it will be narrow pulse pressure. There is one thing called as pulse rate over pulse pressure elevation. So pulse rate divided by pulse pressure. If you get that, person is having a decompensation. You can utilize that also. So clinical diagnosis is done by examining all these different organs. We already mentioned before. So at your leisure time, you can go through. We have already mentioned previously. Urine output can be sometimes misleading because you can have an adequate urine output in spite of the shock in case of alcohol, severe hyperglycemia, person who is on diuretic, mannitol, person who has been given contrast, or person who has undergone CT angio, etc. There is a residual urine in the bladder, diabetes insipidus, etc. can misguide you. Always keep a watch on that. Laboratory support, metabolic acidosis in support, which can be diagnosed by base deficit, lactate levels, bicarbonate levels, and pH. Urine output less than 0.5 per kilogram per hour in adult is adequate enough, and in children 1 ml per kilogram per hour. There are early signs, there are late signs. So if you go through the early signs, we call fall of blood pressure more than 10 millimeter of mercury, tachycardia. Now from early signs, person goes into what we call as a compensatory stage, where there is a further fall of blood pressure 10 to 15 millimeter of mercury, decrease in pulse pressure, tachycardia. Now person starts developing acidosis and person is having altered mental status. From that, if he goes into progressive stage, or we call it the intermediate stage, where there is a marked fall in blood pressure by 20 millimeter of mercury, decreased urine output, acidosis worsens, there is still low volume tachycardia, and there is a more changes in mental functions. And in a refractory stage, now you start getting symptom signs of multi-organ system failure like liver, heart, brain, GI tract, etc. So you divide into mild, moderate, and severe. You can utilize mild is nothing else but what we call is a progressive stage. Sorry, mild is compensated, moderate is uncompensated or progressive, and severe is what we call as end stage, or we call that as irreversible. So these are all the different, we have already shown you before. If you get this finding, always suspect septic shock. You can see mottling. These are subcutaneous bleeding. You can see this rash with bleeding. When you get this, suspect DIC, secondary due to septic shock. This is a minor difference. I'm not going into detail because this will become a very, very long topic. Hypovolemic, distributive, cardiogenic, and obstructive shock. What is the difference in heart rate, JVP, blood, skin condition, capillary refilling time, etc. At your leisure time, you can go through, because to discuss each becomes extremely difficult and it will be a very, very long for you. So at your leisure time, you can go through. There are multiple slides. This is ongoing assessment of shock to divide into warm shock and cold shock. So this is a warm shock finding, airway, breathing, circulation, and findings. At your leisure time, you can go through. This will be more common in septic shock, and this will be more common in cardiogenic shock. So just at your leisure time, go through this. Same thing, warm shock and cold shock. So skin is warm, cold clammy extremities. Here the person will be confused, while here person may be in a stupor or coma. Tachycardia and hypotension is both common. This is bounding pulse, this is 3D pulse. Respiration, tachypnea and hypocarbia, while here it will be tachypnea with hypercarbia, and this is hypoxic respiratory failure. In blood, you will have, because warm shock is very commonly secondary due to sepsis, so you will have a leukocytosis. Here the chances of cold shock, you have more chances of DIC. Pre-renal failure is more common with warm shock, while here chances of tubular necrosis is more common. The person will have a hyperglycemia, hypoproteinemia, more common in warm shock, or we call septic shock. Here, hypoglycemia, lactic acid acidosis, liver failure will be more common. History taking becomes very important, because some of this history will help you a lot. Say, as for example, a person comes with acute abdominal pain, chances of hemorrhagic shock will be more likely. Vomiting, then diarrhea, it will be hypovolemic secondary due to fluid loss and associated with electrolyte imbalance. Person coming with hematemesis or bleeding per rectum, will have a hemorrhagic shock. A pregnant lady comes to you, it will be more chance of hemorrhagic shock, less chance of water imbalance. It will be hemorrhagic hypovolemic shock. Person coming with chest pain, cardiogenic shock. Person who is already having a history of aortic stenosis, mitral stenosis, comes with shock state, will be more likely to be obstructive shock. Person of thyroid disorders comes to you with a shock stage, it will be endocrine, etc. So think in these terms. These are all the slides which tells you little idea regarding a history taking, and in history, if you get some finding, it will be suggest you of some of the possibility. These are for orthostatic, these are for different varieties of shock states. Blood pressure, heart rate, respiration, urine output, and CBC becomes a very important. Pulse oximetry is also important. ECG will be important. Ultrasound, CT and X-ray becomes important. Clinical examination of neurological, respiratory and cardiovascular system is very important, which can tell you that non-critical, potential critical and critically ill patient. This is an important slide, so I'll go through. So if appearance is normal, more in favor of non-critical. If person is sweaty, potentially critical, means there is an excessive sweating, cold clammy extremities. But if a person has got mottled skin, cyanosis, and there is a gray appearance, then it is critically ill. CNS wise, person is fully alert and cooperative, non-critical. Confused, little amount of muscle, accessory muscle is used, potentially critical. And person is drowsy to stupor to coma, more in favor of critically ill. Respiratory system, normal respiratory rate, non-critical. Respiratory rate, tachypnea, potentially critical. And if the person is having a very silent breathing, person is going for Cheyne-Stokes breathing or Byard's breathing, more in favor of critically ill. If there is a rate between 60 to 100 and systolic blood pressure is more than 90, urine output is more than 0.5, non-critical. If heart rate, there is tachycardia, potentially critical. And if the heart rate is less than 50, severe bradycardia or severe tachycardia, and there is a fall of blood pressure below 60 systolic, critically ill. This slide becomes very useful. And if person starts developing severe bradycardia and person goes into cardiac arrest or death, it is following critically ill patient. So do remember this slide. This is very important. This is another important slide which can be utilized in almost majority of the people except children and person with COPD. So depending upon heart rate, blood pressure, respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, response to respiratory by oxygen therapy, urine output and CNS examination. Depending upon that, you put a different score. What are the findings? You put that score. It is also called as adult early warning scoring system. And depending upon that, you can put them into mild, moderate and severe. If person is in this, it is almost we call as negligible chance of risk factors. This is another, this is that EWS scoring, early warning scoring system in adult. Short form called as EWS. This is news, National Early Warning Score, and this is being published by NHS, National Health Scheme in UK, where they use respiratory rate, oxygen saturation, supplementation, temperature, systolic blood pressure, heart rate and CNS level. And depending upon that, you utilize. Again, this cannot be utilized in COPD and children. So these two will be a bad signs. These are bad signs. and this 0 score is a best sign, and then accordingly you can utilize this chart. If it is 0, if it is between 0 to 1 to 4 minimum, if it is more than 5 you got an increased frequency, and more than 7 you require a continuous monitoring because they are critically ill. There is one score utilized, quick SOFA score or Q SOFA score, which is very good for finding out the risk of outcome, and this is very commonly utilized in a septic shock. And there is also called SOFA score, where you utilize respiratory, blood parameters, liver, kidney, brain and cardiovascular system. You utilize all this, but when you want to do very fast, hypotension, altered mental status and tachypnea, these are the three factors which are being utilized. And if the score is more than 22, it is poor prognosis. So there is a SOFA score and quick SOFA score. So this is very frequently utilized in sepsis. So sepsis SOFA, sepsis related organ failure assessment. So you utilize different factors: Glasgow Coma Scale, liver, creatinine level, platelet, hypotension and oxygenation. This is what exactly is happening in a shock stage. You measure central venous pressure, look for peripheral temperature, pulse volume, hematocrit and utilize that. So by measuring a central venous pressure, raised, cold clammy extremities, warm, central venous pressure is low, what are the conditions which will produce warm and which are the conditions which will produce cold clammy extremities, etc. And we already mentioned the most important part is the physical examination and history taking, very important. Blood pressure, then you go for laboratory parameter like CBC, electrolyte, creatinine, glucose, lactate level, blood sugar, cardiac enzymes, blood culture, human choriogonadotropic in female particularly, LFT, ABG. In a case of an abdominal trauma, it is called FAST, that is focused abdominal sonography for traumatic injury. So these are all the things you can go for. There is one more we call SS scan, abdominal cardiac evaluation with sonography in a shock stage. So you examine abdomen, then you go for cardiac evaluation in a shock stage, and in which you look for the cardiac function, IVC, aorta, right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant and pelvis. So you are examining abdomen and cardiac to rule out the some of the etiology in a shock stage. These are the common 6 area which you examine. You have a good ultrasound examination in heart, we call echocardiography, including abdominal examination like inferior vena cava, aorta, right upper quadrant, left upper quadrant and pelvis. 6 window it is called. So it is called, you have got a focus abdominal sonography and SS scan. You can record central venous pressure, systemic vascular resistance and cardiac output. I don't go into detail. Again, this is a very complicated. In a hypovolemic, CVP will be low, cardiac output will be low, but because of compensatory mechanism, systemic vascular resistance will be increased. In distributive, systemic vascular resistance is reduced because of severe peripheral vasodilatation, where all the three are low. Central venous pressure is low, cardiac output is low and systemic vascular resistance is also low. In cardiogenic, cardiac output is low, and in obstructive, again cardiac output is low. So in this two, cardiac output is low, So cardiac output will be low in all four. But in cardiogenic and obstructive, central venous pressure is increased, while central venous pressure will be low in hypovolumic and distributive. You will have to keep this in your mind. If you understand the exact pathophysiology, it becomes very easy. JVP can be substituted by central venous pressure, roughly. So if you can examine JVP properly, it can be useful. But if you cannot make out JVP properly, you can go for central venous pressure. Bedside ultrasound for central venous pressure can be done very easily by examining inferior vena cava. So if you examine the inferior vena cava diameter, it gives you a good idea that what is the central venous pressure, and these are the criteria which are being utilized. If you are interested, you can go through a good ultrasonologist can give you exact answer regarding this central venous pressure, and invariably it is close to your central venous catheter. Then another test is passive leg raise, which can be substitute for central venous pressure. You elevate the leg by 45°, maintain it for 5 minutes, and then if there is a pulse pressure change, that is difference between systolic and diastolic, more than 9%, it is indicative of what we call as a hypovolumic or fluid responsive, and it is almost sensitive 79% and specific is 85% predictor value. Then another very useful is you can go for a echocardiographic estimation where you can estimate different things which can help you to identify. You look for JVP, you look for IVC on ultrasound, passive leg raising, temperature of extremities, LV function on ultrasound, etc. will give you a good idea regarding what variety, whether it is hypovolumic, distributive, cardiogenic or obstructive variety. So these are all the different types of tests which you can do indirectly to identify the severity of shock and the different stages of shock. As far as differential diagnosis is concerned, you have to differentiate between hypovolumic and normovolumic. In normovolumic, cardiogenic, and in cardiogenic, intracardiac, extracardiac. Distributive variety can be anaphylactic, neurogenic or septic, and then comes what we call as a distributive variety. So try to identify all these conditions and dissociative. So you will have to identify that, and management will totally depend upon the variety of shock stage. That is, for management you will have to take a good history, good physical examination. First, initially in a person with hypovolumic, always go for volume resuscitation, mainly by crystalloid. If blood pressure is not elevated even after volume resuscitation, then you will require what we call as vasopressor drugs. And the most common vasopressor drugs utilized is norepinephrine. So first thing is volume resuscitation followed by vasopressor drugs. Like any person who is having a shock stage, always go for we call as a circulation, airway, breathing. Then we call as fluid challenge. Vasopressor should be done first. So in hypovolemic, IV fluid is a must. Vasopressor is temporary. You don't require inotropes. In distributive variety, you need IV fluids, you need vasopressor, and you might need even inotropes. In cardiogenic, you need mainly inotropes. In obstructive variety, depending upon the type of obstruction, usually invariably you require surgical intervention or other treatment. So this is a useful slide. If clinically you diagnose hypovolemic, you will have to give fluids plus you might need a vasopressor. You don't require inotropes. While in a cardiogenic, you don't require more of IV fluids. You might require inotropes more common, and occasionally you might require a vasopressor drugs. In obstructive, depending upon the etiology, you will require a treatment. And in distributive variety, you will require IV fluids, you will require vasopressor, and you might require even inotropes. So depending upon, this is again same thing shown you. In cardiogenic, you will require inotropes and after load reductions. In hypovolemic, IV fluids, mainly crystalloids, if not then colloids. And in distributive variety, antibiotics, low dose of steroids, guidelines directed therapy, activated protein C, etc. In arrhythmogenic, you will require to control the rhythms, and depending upon the what we call is a toxic mediated treatment for cyanide poisoning and treatment for carbon monoxide poisoning. So that will be the most common. This is the slide which is showing you which will be better. So you've got different compounds which are available. Vasoconstriction will be because of this. Vasodilatation is because of all these compounds. You've got a different types of adrenoreceptor, alpha 1, beta 1 and beta 2, and you should be aware of where this catecholamines is acting. Norepinephrine is acting at alpha 1, beta 1, it is not acting on beta 2, while epinephrine, that is adrenaline, is acting on all, but it is powerful as far as beta 1 receptor is concerned and beta 2 receptor is concerned, and in how much dose it will produce both effect. You should know all those things. And this is a chart which is showing you the effect of all the different compounds on alpha receptor, beta 1, beta 2, dopa receptors, what is the effect on systemic vascular resistance, heart rate, cardiac output, and effect on blood pressure. So there are some compounds which will not elevate your blood pressure, and there are some compounds which will may produce fall of blood pressure. So do keep it in mind. So this becomes very, very important because some are inotropes, some are vasopressor with inotropes, etc. So it should be very clear in your mind which compound will be helpful in which variety. Indirectly, we say that phenylephrine is more vasoconstrictor, while dobutamine and dopamine is going to increase your cardiac output more as compared to increasing the systemic vascular. On the top, it decreases the systemic vascular resistance. So you have to keep a watch where you want a systemic vascular resistance to be increased, where you want cardio output to be increased. This will be inotropes, this will be vasopressor drugs. So you should be aware of these are more of vasopressor, these are more of what we call as inotropes groups. So you should have, and some will have mixture of the action. So they will be mild inotropes with mild vasopressor. You have to keep a watch on that. So in a septic shock, norepinephrine is preferred. In a refractory septic shock, you will utilize vasopressin or epinephrine instead of norepinephrine. In cardiogenic shock, dobutamine and dopamine are the first drug, and then you can combine norepinephrine with dobutamine. In hypovolemic IV fluids, you don't require inotropes or vasopressor. In a mixed group, norepinephrine is preferred. Indirectly, in septic shock, norepinephrine is the first choice. And in cardiogenic shock, dobutamine is first choice. And in hypovolemic, you don't require any. So goal of management, first, identify the cause, treat the basic cause. Goal second, resuscitation should be done first, where you try to increase the oxygen supply. So these are all what we call as a fluid resuscitation. There are a lot of slides. At your leisure time, you can go through. This is fluid resuscitation response, rapid response, transient response, and minimal response. Depending upon that, you can find out the person is fluid responsive or not, and then you can continue with your treatment. So there are some who are transient responder, some are non-responder, and depending upon that, you can go for further treatment. So fluid resuscitation, rapid responder, transient responder, no responder, what happens, what you should give. This is initial assessment and shock management, particularly in case of tension pneumothorax, massive pneumothorax, hemothorax, cardiac tamponade, you will require an intervention, and that should be done according to your diagnosis. And this will be all what we call as an obstructive variety of cardiogenic shock, in obstructive variety. And some of the conditions, these are hemorrhagic variety, intra-abdominal hemorrhage and obvious external bleeding. You might require that. This is a summary of hemorrhagic shock, cardiogenic shock, septic shock, and anaphylactic shock. What you do. So goal in almost in all. This is by invasive criteria. These are non-invasive criteria. These are more beneficial because even in absence of invasive criteria, you can look the prognosis by respiration, blood pressure, temperature, pulse, clinical finding like cyanosis, edema, orthopnea, shortness of breath, hemoglobin, basal crackles, urine output, oxygen concentration, total count and lactate levels. While invasive criteria, central venous pressure, mean arterial pressure, urine output, oxygen concentrations, hematocrit, lactate level, total count, and you can identify irreversible or person is coming to compensated stage, etc. So these are all the factors you can go through. This is one of the simple tests we have already shown you before. Leg raising to 45°, maintain it for 5 minutes and see that the pulse pressure changes more than 9%. So if that happens, person is fluid responsive. And these are all the different flow charts. At your leisure time you can go through. What are the different criterias and what you do. This is different charts showing you how you approach to a person of shock stage when you see in a everyday practice. Cardiogenic shock, hypovolemic shock, low output cardiogenic shock, cardiac arrhythmias, and how you approach. This is given in a different pattern, that is hemorrhagic shock, whether fever is there or not. Then cardiogenic shock you can rule out, arrhythmias, unexplained conditions, abdominal conditions, etc. And you approach to those particular groups. This is traumatic hemorrhagic shock. This is anaphylactic shock algorithms. At your leisure time, you can have a pause and you can go through. And this is what is preferred. Different headings which are given: IV fluid, blood, antibiotics, steroid, antihistaminic, dopamine, dobutamine, noradrenaline, adrenaline, nitroglycerin, colloid, and albumin. And these are the 5 headings which are being taken: hypovolemic, septic, cardiogenic, anaphylaxis, and neurogenic. And what is preferred, what is should not be given. Red is danger, black is indications. So try to go through at your leisure time if you are interested. These are all the different compounds which we call as the vasopressor drugs, different vasopressor drugs, which receptor they are acting, what is the effect, what is the dose, what are the adverse effects, and rate of titration, how you titrate. Complication secondary to shock stage is AKI, most common. You can have a irreversible shock stage. CVS can be damaged. Person can go to acute myocardial infarction. In CNS, you can develop brain damage, respiratory system, ARDS, and person can even succumb to death. And you can have a multi-organ damage syndrome. In hypovolemic, hyperviscosity syndrome can also occur. Take home points: shock is a progressive process. If you detect in an early stage, you can prevent morbidity as well as mortality. identifying the stage, whether compensated, uncompensated, or irreversible, or before even a compensated stage, in what we call as the early stage. And if you classify them into hypovolemic, distributive, cardiogenic, or obstructive, treatment will be there. And if you treat as early as possible, you can prevent multi-organ damage and mortality and morbidity. And you can utilize different algorithms for management. Now I thank you all for taking out time. I know that your time is valuable, and I appreciate you for spending some of it with me. So I hope this lecture will be very helpful to you, because very frequently you will come across in your everyday practice. So go through at your leisure time.